And good evening and welcome everyone now and in the future. I'm your host, Jeremy Como. This is Inside CKP. Uh, my guest today is Maya Kleve. I am saying your last name right, Maya?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And before we get into it, let's pay the bills. This show, obviously, is brought to you by Chris Kennedy Publishing. Go to chriskennedypublishing.com for all your literary needs. They have military sci-fi, fantasy, urban fantasy, a little bit of nonfiction, a little bit of romance, not too much, and everything in between. You can go there. Of course, if you want to support Chris Kennedy Publishing and this podcast, go to their Patreon. Of course, you can find everything they offer on Amazon, but you can go through the Chris Kennedy Publishing website as well to find all that. For all the gooey gossip and news, you can find them on Chris Kennedy Publishing Facebook. And then for the fan page, you can find all the fun on the factory floor. Uh, Maya, like I said, Maya is one of Chris Kennedy Publishing's editors. And where can they find you, Maya?
They can find me at markedup.com is my editing page.
Okay.
And they can also find me on Facebook and on what was it, LinkedIn. I just updated the LinkedIn recently, so that's that should be up to date with my editing stuff. But other than that, that's
Facebook. All right. So, well, let's get into it. So we've interviewed a lot of authors on this, but that's not all that goes into publishing books. You've got to have editors, and you've got to have good editors. And from what I hear, you're one of the good ones.
Well, thanks. Good to know.
So, how did you? First of all, how did you get into editing? What have you? I know you've had other jobs and stuff before, and now you're editing. What brought you into editing?
So really what got me into editing fiction was Kevin J. Anderson was looking for folks to help re-release a lot of the out-of-print Brian Herbert stuff. So
Okay.
he was looking for folks to basically proofread the scanned files of all the old Frank Herbert stuff. So that's where I got started, and I once I realized that was something that I could actually do and get paid for, I was like, holy cow, how come nobody ever told me this was a thing?
Wait, this is a job?
Exactly. And people pay me to make corrections to books and stuff, and I can read them before other people do. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that was the but I started out really slow. All of Kevin's stuff was just volunteer stuff, and I did that for a few years while I was working a regular day job. And then somewhere along the line, he was like, hey, we need somebody to do some more in-depth editing on some of our newer authors. Would you be interested in doing that? And I'm like, okay. So I went ahead and tried it out, and I've been pretty much doing that since. And so I'm counting back. I've been doing that about 9 years now since I started. So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah.
So wait. So which Kevin is this that got you into this?
Kevin J. Anderson. He
J-
he
Kevin J.
co-writes. Yeah, he co-writes with Brian Herbert on the new Dune.
Mhm.
He also has his own stuff. What is it? His Saga of Seven Suns. That's his big sci-fi epic series. And then he also has a fun one that he's been getting back into, which is his Dan Shamble Zombie PI.
Oh yeah.
Series.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's more urban fantasy based,
Mhm.
but it's more humor based. But they're really short, and they're really a lot of fun to check out.
So was that the first time you have ever edited and I mean, how do you get tapped for that? Is that the first time you've edited fiction books or books in general, or?
Yeah, so it was the first time I'd edited fiction.
Mhm.
Oddly enough, my mom, way back when I was in high school, owned a print shop, so I knew how to do proofing from, layout and stuff like that in standard printing. But of course, like I said, I didn't realize, even though I was a huge reader at the time, I didn't realize, there's process to get from, a rough manuscript to what readers hold in their hands at the end of the day. Um, so I did have a lot of practice doing like the proofing stuff and things like that. So I'm one of those weird folks that if we go to a restaurant and the menu's off, it will bug me until it gets out of my vision because it's like, oh my god, it's crooked. Get it out of here.
Now, are you compelled to let them know there are errors in their menus?
No, no.
Okay.
Because if I did, it would drive me crazy. So Facebook is one of those things where I kind of shut off the editor part of me because
Mhm.
people make typos, people are writing on their phones, and there's no way to catch everything. Now I will occasionally make digs at authors and other editor friends of mine if they
Mhm.
make a huge mistake, but usually I'm just like, no, let it go. It's not one of those places to nag people about their spelling or whatnot.
So, so how did you become a part of the CKP family?
So another Kevin. So Kevin Eikenberry this time.
Hmm.
I have been one of his first readers for 7 or 8 years now, probably 7 years. And he asked me to read over his first Peacemaker story,
Hmm.
Jessica Francis Peacemaker story, which was in, I believe, the first CKP anthology that way back, or not CKP, 4HU, Four
Hmm.
Horsemen Universe anthology, way back at the beginning. And so I did. And then he got asked by Chris to do Peacemaker, his first full length novel in the 4HU, of course. And I said, sure. And we just continued that. And once I started reading the 4HU stuff, I'm like, okay, I really like this. I'm a huge fan of Robert Heinlein. So the mechs and things like and aliens, I was on board from the beginning for all that.
Awesome.
So then I started reading all the stuff. I got onto Chris's mailing list and his ARC readers. So I was like, oh, and I was starting to really get into doing the editing full time. I was working toward that end goal. So one of the things I did was I was like, oh, so if there are mistakes, do you want to know about this? And he's like, sure. So I did 3 or 4 of ARC reading uh, books and sending him corrections. And then I was like, hey, do you happen to need another editor?
Hmm.
And he's like, sure. So then we talked it over and he brought me on and I've been doing that ever since. And I just realized it was earlier this week. It's been 5 years since I
Oh
started,
wow.
doing work with CKP. So
Oh yeah, you were almost there from the beginning.
yeah,
Almost.
it's been good.
Yeah. Well, so well, here we've got some. You have fans.
Yep.
Well, here, well, Matt can confirm the menu thing.
Yes.
Uh,
And Matt is my other half and also a CKP author.
yes. Um, oh, and he also says you kick ass. There you go. And your buddy Bill
Yep.
thinks you're the best. So, well, so now I can. Editing is a skill,
Hmm.
and not only is it a skill, it is a talent because I can't do it. Is like if you ask me to correct something, it's going to have as many mistakes as it started with, because it's that's not my talent. So I'm assuming you love to read.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So how did what like when did you start reading? When you were a kid? What were you reading? That kind of stuff.
So I was reading that I remember was in second grade, and I started out with the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh yeah.
It's always either that or Lord of the Rings or one of those beginning ones,
Hmm.
and um, I did a lot of like the teen romance novels and things like that. But in high school, um, one of the folks that became one of my best friends in high school, he got me into the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And from there, it was like, that was it. Hitchhiker's Guide, Robert Heinlein, Anne McCaffrey, and I was off. And so I would be carrying, in addition, because I was also one of those very studious kids in high school. I actually liked going to school. Yes, I've been weird forever. And so I'd have my stack of school books, and then I would have 3 or 4 fun read books stacked on top of that. And people just looked at me like I was completely out of my mind. And they're like, why do you have 3 books? It's like, well, in case I don't want to read that one, and this one I'm almost done with, and I need to have another one so I don't run out. Kindle has been a really good thing for me.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was reading anywhere from 3 to 4 books a week when I was in high school, on top of everything else I was doing for school and stuff. And I've slowed down since, just because editing takes up a lot of time, of course. But I still try to make time to read a couple of books a week if I can.
The battle continues here.
Yes.
Pern dragons are real dragons. For those of you who wonder what that comment means, go watch the Dragon Wars episode that we had a few weeks back to get caught up on that argument.
Yeah.
So you are similar to my wife, Marisa Wolf. For those who are new to the channel in the future, Marisa Wolf of Fabulous Authors is my wife, and one of the very I was never a reader. I had trouble reading, growing up. I didn't like it. I'm still an audiophile. I listen to audiobooks. But there was this cute girl I was dating, and I wanted to share some of her interests, and so I said, "Oh, well, what books would you recommend to me?" And one of the first series that she recommended to me was Hitchhiker's Guide.
Nice.
And of course, there's the whole perm porn joke that we throw around because she and Casey Ezel would write perm fiction, and all of the significant others of that friend writing group came up with the term perm porn because we swear that they were writing dragon love scenes, and so that just happened organically. All the husbands or boyfriends at the time called it perm porn. So y'all, if y'all haven't already, y'all should talk love of perm porn. So what did you do prior? You said you had a day job. What did you do prior to?
Oh my goodness. So prior to editing, I've worked in banking, thin film coding, which was actually the production side. I set the schedules and everything like that. Medicare insurance.
Oh God.
Well, I didn't sell it. I was the admin, and I basically helped collate all the information every year from the different Medicare plans so that we could then compare that for our potential clients and everything like that. So I know way too much about Medicare at too young of an age. What else? What else have I done? Worked in computers, a lot of computer stuff. So I'm kind of a computer geek too. Telecommunications, also as a production project management person. So that's pretty much anything, any business or any kind of large company as an admin or as a project manager type is what I pretty much specialized in.
So what told you, or what was the switch that says, you know what, I like this editing thing. I'm gonna do this full time.
That was actually it just came out of me being a huge reader and then finding out that being an editor was an actual job. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to make this work. So I started with, like I said, Kevin Anderson's Wordfire Press. And then I started getting some individual clients, my freelance clients, and a couple of those folks I still work with. And then as first reader for Kevin, and then Chris Kennedy Publishing. and that's been my thing. I love the fact that I get to read all day long and make corrections and help make books better. And
Hmm.
I get some really amazing books along the way. Um, Bill Frisbee's series is definitely one of those that has been a real bonus as far as being an editor
Oh, you
recently.
mean
Yeah,
this series?
yeah, that series, his Last Marine series. I mean, I got the first one, and Chris is like, "Oh, and I need you to do this other one." I'm like, "Okay," and then he's like, "And I want you to stick with this series." I'm like, "Can I go back to the other one?"
Yeah.
Because I was like, I really like that one, and I want to stick with that. So um, I'm hoping that I know Bill's working on the next set of books, so I'm hoping that that comes out in the next 6 months or so, so I can fit that into my schedule for the end of the year.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, if you like military science fiction, Space Marines, a little bit of horror thrown in, then The Last Marines is definitely the way to go.
Oh yeah, doing the research for this episode, I got all the covers and everything. The covers are amazing. I
They are,
love those things.
yeah,
And Bill, if you're listening, free invitation to come on the show and talk about your series, bud.
yeah, especially since book 6 just came out last week. So
Yes, yes, you
yeah,
you are
so
welcome anytime.
yeah, so if you're one of those folks that likes to wait until the entire series is out before you start it, you can do that now. The first 6 are out. No, he doesn't tie up all of the plot lines because he's got to have something for the next bunch of books.
Hmm.
But those 6 wrap up very nicely, and then he leaves a couple of doors open so that we can kind of see where he's going to go for the future ones.
So you've worked on the entire series.
I did, I
Okay.
did. Yeah,
And so that's the thing that you've most recently worked on
it is for CKP. Yeah,
for CKP.
yeah.
So, what other, if you can, if you
Mm-hmm.
can talk about it, what other? I mean, do you do anything besides fiction editing and stuff like that?
No, I only do fiction just because it's got to engage me, and I'm not a nonfiction person.
Hmm.
Um, I started out doing science fiction and fantasy because that's primarily Frank Herbert, Kevin Anderson, the people that Wordfire Press was uh, publishing at the time is all science fiction and fantasy. I recently started doing more thriller type of stuff. So there's an author, Russ Tilton. He's got some really good, um, what we were calling it, bio thrillers.
Okay.
Yeah, is kind of but it's animal research type stuff. And yeah, he does a really good job with those, and I've been really enjoying those. We just finished up book 5, I think, in his series.
Hmm.
So yeah, he's really moving, and he really he's really good to work with because I gave him a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, this is his first series. The first
Hmm.
book that I did for him was his first book he had ever written,
Oh wow.
and by the time I got the third book from him, he had taken the advice I'd given him in the first 2 and applied it. So he's definitely progressed as we've worked together. So
So, do you work strictly for publishers, or you'll do individual authors?
I do individual authors as well. So
Okay.
if anybody's interested, there's a contact page on my website, or they can ping me through my Facebook page. Yep.
For those
Yep.
who are wondering, there you go.
Yep.
Markup.com.
Yep.
And well, let's get into the fun part. So, do you do you have favorites, and if you or favorite genres, or stuff that before you got it and you got like the primer for it, you were like, oh my god, this is gonna be good. Do you have those moments?
Not often, just because I don't usually get a whole lot of information up front
Mm-hmm.
on books. But I do know the kind of things that interest me.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody and I try to be very clear on my website because I've read a lot of romance, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not interested in editing romance.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be very clear. And if somebody has romance and they send it to me, it's like, okay, that's great. This isn't something that I do, and then I can refer them off to other folks because I know several other editors, and
Mm-hmm.
um, So, and I'm willing, and I know that they do romance, so I can do that. So if it's a genre that I'm not, or if it's a genre that I'm not familiar with, because I know erotica is another big one, but
Hmm.
I don't do that, but I know a couple of people who do, so I can hand it off to them. So it really does help all of us because we know each other. Excuse me.
Oh yeah.
And But usually, if it's military science fiction at this point, science fiction, urban fantasy,
Yeah.
thriller.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say horror, but it has to be the non-gore type horror, so more
Hmm.
psychological horror type of stuff.
Hmm.
Those are the things that I really like.
Kind of more in line with the thriller.
Yeah, more in line with the thriller, but I mean, it could be Lovecraft would be a good example. So
Hmm.
there's something that's lingering in the background that's causing problems,
Hmm.
but but you don't actually see anything directly necessarily.
Hmm.
But I'm not not into slasher horror or anything like that. So, um, but I did discover recently that I do tend to enjoy books with explosions and gunfights a little bit more.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
So, are you this? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh, even in my leisure reading, because one of my favorite current authors is Jonathan Mayberry, and he's got his Rogue Team International, his Joe Ledger stuff, and yeah,
Hmm.
it's gunfights and explosions. So
Jonathan Mayberry. I'm gonna have to write that one down. Hold on.
yeah, it's
Check that one out.
Maberry.
Mayberry. I'm always looking for book recommendations.
Oh
So.
yeah. So fair warning, his first book is a zombie. The first book in that series is a zombie book,
Hmm.
but and but I am not a zombie person.
Hmm.
I am not a
No, you look
fan.
normal.
But I'm not a fan of reading zombie books, but I like Mayberry's zombies.
Okay.
So I
Are they
love that. Huh?
fast zombies or slow zombies?
Yes.
Oh. Oh.
It depends on how they're created.
Okay.
And he's got a whole slew of different types of zombies and different types of monsters. And I mean, he just, the great thing is, let me hold on. So to give you an idea, he's a bit of a folklorist as well.
Hmm.
So he wrote this.
Oh.
It's out of print, but he wrote
Mhm.
this, and this tells you all. I mean, it's thick.
Oh, it's like
I
an
mean,
encyclopedia.
it is, and
Okay.
he goes into the folklore of zombies worldwide, globally.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so it's a
That's
lot of
fun.
yeah, and he's got a couple other ones. He talks to experts in policing and military response, and he's got folks that he can talk to at the CDC, and so he wrote another one called Zombie CSU, and
Hmm.
he asks these experts, what would how would you respond to this? What would be a way that zombies would actually exist and things like that? So um, his the reason I like his monsters is because they have a, a grain of fact in them. He
Hmm.
bases it on reality. So there's something there that to build on. It's not just here's your monster.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, I love that kind of stuff too, to where it's like, oh, this could be real because there's some science mixed into it,
exactly.
and it's for the layman somewhat feasible,
Right.
and I love that stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so we've got a question from the
Mhm.
audience. Let's see. Yvonne asks, "What should you major in to become an editor?"
So I can only tell you what other editors have majored in because I didn't actually study to be an editor formally. I've been
Hmm.
taking classes and I'm self-taught and things like that. But there are some schools that have an editing or publishing track
Hmm.
or major. Um, but I uh, I know that there are other editors who've done English,
Hmm.
who have done journalism, and some creative writing, but you're not guaranteed to necessarily get the skills that you need for those. If the school offers actual editing courses. So courses on how to do copy editing, developmental editing, or some people call it content or substantive editing. Those are the types of courses that you want to include in your class list, because those are the things that you're actually going to be doing. If you're out of school, there are several places that you can go. The Editorial Freelancers Association, EFA, and I think that's theefa.org is the website. They're an organization, but they also offer classes, and you don't have to be a member to take those classes, though the classes are a little more expensive if you do it that way. And then, of course, other colleges. I think BYU has an editing curriculum. There's a California school, and I don't remember which one. And then in Canada, there's a Canadian like editing course that you can take, and Queen's College, I think. I've only heard it mentioned a couple times, but I know that that's specific in Canada.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great question, Yvonne. Anybody else has a question? Keep them coming. Our buddy Nick Steverson has entered the fray here.
Yes.
And what this is? Yeah, he's calling the Pern Dragon. I'm gonna have to, because I have to admit I have not read Pern, and so in order to take part in these arguments, which I have moderated a discussion / argument between Melissa and Marisa and Nick Steverson about dragons. So I'm gonna have to read this and
yes, you are,
and see what's going on. But he calls them bullshit test tube lizards. So I'm gonna have to read to see what that means.
Well, he's not wrong about the test tube part, but I have to agree with Melissa, they are dragons. So
I didn't know you was bigger of a fan. We should have made a big panel about it. Just had a big knockdown dragon.
We can do that. We could do
that.
Yeah.
I think we are gonna have we're gonna have to have a part 2 to this.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, what's this? Which James? Queens is the university in Kingston. I had a couple friends. Okay.
Oh, okay. So
it is in Canada.
Okay. Yep.
So Jamie is our Canadian buddy.
Yep.
Let's see. What is this? What questions would you like every author to ask themselves before looking for an editor? Good question.
Okay, so the biggest question is can you take criticism? Can you take instruction? Because even if your mom and your best friend tell you that you've written the best book ever, you got to understand they may just be being nice. They may not honestly think that you've got a great book. So one of the things that I am, and a lot of editors I know, is we're very straightforward. We don't want to be mean, but some of our comments might come across as mean if you're not in the right mindset. So you have to be willing to take the feedback and the comments and understand that we are trying to make your book better. We're trying to make your writing better. So if we tell you something, if we're telling you that something isn't working or that something else might work better, we're trying to improve your product. Some people think that the editor is trying to rewrite everything. And I explain to everyone what I'm putting in the comments, what I am changing as far as the text goes, is these are suggestions. If you like what I've suggested, great. If you feel like you want to rewrite it, fine. But you have to understand there is a reason that that's been changed. We're not just trying to, see how much red we can put on the page. Though some people sometimes think that. Nick, but it's not my vision.
Oh, my baby.
Well, if you've got a good editor, though, they understand your vision and they will definitely try to make it better. If you get an editor and you feel like they're not on the same page as you, so to speak, then you need to find a different editor. Or you might need to have a conversation with your editor and say, okay, so this is what you gave me as feedback. either you don't understand it, you don't understand why the change should be made. Um, Talk to your editor. Maybe they misunderstood what you were trying to do in that particular scene. I've had that happen. I say, hey, make this change. And they come back and go, oh, no, this is what I was trying to do. And it's like, oh, okay, now I understand. So, no, you're right. You don't need to accept that change. However, 3 pages later, you should make this other change to make that clearer.
Mm-hmm.
So, having a communication with your editor is actually something that I know being both an author and an editor are very solitary things, and we like to, be by ourselves and do our thing. But sometimes you have to have that communication back and forth. So don't assume that the editor is trying to tear your work apart and that they're never going to get you. But if you do have that conversation and you still feel like you're not connecting and that um, they're not going to help you the way that you want to be helped in making your book better, then by all means, go to somebody else. And I've had people do that, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't, um, I don't take it personally. I understand that I may not be the right editor for them
Yeah, it's got to be
because
a good fit. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, let's see. Yvonne, I don't know. It's like I think the time is coming. She may kick me out if I don't read her. Anyway, so to that note, um, one of the reasons why I don't read fantasy, like hard fantasy or things like that,
Hmm.
is because they have to create this world,
Hmm.
uh, a new world, typically. A new world, characters with funky names, places with funky names, animals with funky names, things like that. And that throws, because I feel like I have to read the book 2 or 3 times in order. And I'm not trying to edit. I'm just trying to read this thing.
Right.
So, uh, do you have to have this big conversation before you start editing a book, or do they give you a Bible, or how does that work?
It depends. So I do a couple of fantasy series, and one of them is a client that I came back into her series later.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the first one with her, and even 6 books in, coming in on the sixth or seventh book, I was like, oh, so she did take my advice because she was trying to build a fantasy world and she hadn't set the rules up really well. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the basic rules, I don't know if you play D&D, but in D&D, there's a very, uh, I use money as the example. So she had money, but she didn't have it really make any sense. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so here is how in D&D and how a lot of fantasy authors lay out their monetary system. And I laid it out for her. And I can tell now in books 6, 7, and 8 that she took that advice because it's much clearer how the monetary system works. It doesn't come up often, but when you have your characters paying for stuff, you have to, they need to be paying in, coppers or gold and not platinum, you
Yeah,
know,
you need consistency.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I see she took that advice. Um, But because I came in again so late, she's like, this is what I've got as far as my style sheet and my character sheet and my pronunciation guide. Because she's got one character, which is a little frustrating for me because if you've got a character with dialect, I try to minimize it because having to keep the spelling consistent all the way through is very difficult sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But having her guide made it really easy because I was able to go back through and go, oh no, she wanted it this way, so I had to go back in and remove some of the changes I'd made and things like that. But she had set that up. She understood that this needs to be there so that whether it's me editing or another person editing, they know what she is trying to do with her character, and we have to stick with that because that's how she wants her character to sound. So that's her series Bible, literally.
Her vision. Yes. Yes.
Exactly. And even though I don't necessarily like it, that's her
Yeah.
that's
You
her
don't. You
rules.
don't have to like it. You just have to edit it.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
Exactly. So we've got that going. Um yes, exactly, Joy. We're trying to make
From a
it better.
fellow editor.
Yes. Yes. And so but I think one of the things with fantasy for a reader is you have to be able to keep all that in your head. You have to understand all that. on a level where you're not thinking about it when something comes up. So a lot of um, non-Tolkien fantasy. So between Tolkien and current day, there's a whole bunch of fantasy that's kind of based on, well, not kind of, it's based on Tolkien, but it's also kind of based on real world because you have horses and you have, you know, trees. Things don't have weird names. You might have a couple of baddie characters like the ring wraiths in Lord of the Rings, where they have funky names, but it's not so much that it overwhelms the reader because especially with the new books, um, you don't have the lovely little glossary at the beginning or the end of the book that you can flip back and forth to. You have to allow the reader to be able to hold that in their head.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I've done on occasion with authors in fantasy or even science fiction, because alien planets, aliens, alien names, you can overwhelm the reader and people don't understand what you're talking about anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
may as well be a different language.
Mm-hmm.
So part of being an editor is saying, okay, these are great, but do you have to do do you have to do this? You
Mm-hmm.
know? Or if you are doing this, can you bring it back just a little bit because you're kind of overwhelming the reader. There's a little too much information, so spread that out a little more. So that's the info dumps that we sometimes get.
Oh
you,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
don't want the info dumps, you want to spread that information out. So try to only give the reader what they need at that moment for that scene, for that chapter. That's information that's relevant now.
So without naming names, have you ever gotten something and you were like, "Oh no, honey, this ain't gonna work," and
Oh
you have,
yes, I have. And as an editor, what you try to do is you're like, okay, so this isn't working well. These are some things you can try. These are some suggestions. If you
mhm.
want to, yes, Cajun counts as an alien language.
Hey, damn it, I'm Cajun.
I know we know. And yes, as an alpha reader, sometimes you have to be like, hey, can you pull that back a little bit because you might be overloading your reader a little bit. And
Mhm,
that's what one of the things that alpha readers are really good for. I also
mhm.
do that as a beta reader. That's one of the services I have is um, I will give them an editorial beta read, which is a standard beta read, and then I give them editorial feedback based on that.
So for us non-literary types,
Uh-huh.
what's the difference between an alpha reader, a beta reader, and all that
Okay,
stuff?
so an alpha reader is usually a person who will get either the rough draft or the pre-edited draft from
Okay.
the author. Okay, so like Kevin Eikenberry, he'll finish his thing, he'll do a rough edit on it, and then he throws it over to me.
Okay.
I'll read through it as an alpha reader. I will tell him if there's anything that doesn't make sense, if anything's out of sequence, if if it looks like if I can tell he's juggled scenes around or something like that. I'll give him that feedback. Because I'm also an editor, I will also fix some of the some of his more common editorial things. So he's got a lot of mechanical things that sometimes he doesn't catch. So I'll go through and I'll fix that stuff for him before he sends it on. We speak unique,
Well,
Yvonne.
yeah, but this is along the Cajun comment
Yeah, the
earlier,
Cajun thing.
which I'm still recovering from.
Yes.
Uh, and then yes, Yvonne, you're correct. We are special.
Yes. uh, um, a beta reader is usually after all of the things have been fixed.
Hmm.
Um, then the author will send it out to some people to make sure that it interests them. Does everything hold together? Is there anything that they would like to see more of, see less of, things like that? And they usually just give basic story feedback. Uh, and then once the author has made any changes based on that feedback, then they'll usually send it on to the publisher, or they'll go ahead and hit publish.
Okay.
Not all authors use alpha and beta readers.
Oh, but they should.
Um, I can't say that.
Oh, okay.
You should have somebody read through it to make sure that the continuity is good. I
Hmm.
think. Um, but if you're an author who plots well,
Mm-hmm.
you already know that everything's in place. If
Yeah.
you are an author who types well or dictates well and knows the rules of punctuation and everything like that, then you may not need to go through all that. I know authors who can put books out once a month because they plot and then they can put everything down on paper well enough that they don't have to have somebody else go in after them. They don't even use an editor. They might use a copy editor just to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that there aren't any typos or any gross errors, gross meaning large errors. Um, but even then, some may not. So
Yeah.
it really depends. Um, we were at Superstars, and Dean Wesley Smith, who happens to be one of those plots it out, writes it, and then sends it on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he says that you shouldn't need. He doesn't think you need an editor unless it's a copy or proof editor. So, but
Okay.
that's him,
Yeah.
and
For
he's
different
been doing it
shows.
long enough that he but he thinks that anybody can do it. I think he's exaggerating a little bit,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I believe there are people out there who can um, plot something out, write it, and publish it, and not have very many errors.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Oh. You know what, Joy? You're right. I never say this during the show. Everyone, if you like what's going on here, even if you don't like what's going on here, please click the like button and subscribe. It really helps the show out. I appreciate you, Joy, for bringing that up because I never say it and I need to. Next question. Can you describe the different types of edits on an author? Wait, can you describe the different types of edits an author might look for?
sure. Okay, so starting at the top is content or substantive editing, and that's basically the editor will go in and they will tell you where you need to develop your characters more, develop your world building more, develop your scenes more, and they will go through scene by scene, chapter by chapter, and give you basically a huge rundown on everything that they can see needs work on your manuscript. The best one that I know of is Joshua Esso. He's a great guy. I met him early on in my career, and I can't do what he does.
Hmm.
And he's a great guy. Um, One down from that would be developmental editing, which is very similar, but it's not quite as fine grained. So developmental editing usually will tell you if there are story problems, character arcs that aren't completed, if you've dropped a plot line somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you mentioned this way back in chapter 2, but nothing for the rest of the book, or you mention it chapter 5 and then you don't mention it again until chapter 20. So you need to have something connecting those together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Line editing, which is uh, basically trying to make sure that everything is consistent, that your characters sound consistent, that your narrative is uh, narrative voice is consistent. Um, Sometimes word choice, sometimes how things are put together, um, and that's pretty in depth too. Uh, More commonly, what you get is copy editing, which is uh, typos and word choice
Mm-hmm.
and punctuation. And I will, if I know that the person hasn't done a dev edit, I will also point out plot holes or
Mm-hmm.
continuity errors. I won't necessarily tell them how to fix it unless I can see something right away,
Yeah.
but I will definitely point out, hey, you mentioned this here, but it's this here type of thing. Just because I can't not tell them, and I think that it does a disservice to the author if you don't let them know that there's a problem there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
um,
and that seems so important. That one part of editing right there is like if you see a major
right.
hole that's going to affect the enjoyment of the book, how could you
Yeah.
not? You know?
Yeah. But I mean, everybody's different, and I'm not getting down on editors who don't do that because some of them have to very strictly stick to what they've been hired to do. For me, it doesn't take any more time to put a comment for that than it does for me to make a word correction. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's a one-to-one thing. And um, something that somebody else pointed out is and I've noticed this forever, is all the different types of editing kind of do this. There's no, it's not a definitive line. It's
Mm-hmm.
everything kind of crisscrosses. So you have to decide which types of corrections you're going to make and things like that. So, and then proof editing, which is used to be when you got the layouts. That's when you did the proof editing. Proof
Mm-hmm.
editing has become a little bit more like copy editing,
Mm-hmm.
where you will point out typos, um, missing punctuation, incorrect punctuation, things like that. So it's a little, uh, that one's a little squidgy as far as the definition.
Yeah.
You can still do proof editing because there are people, because they're doing things like pamphlets or booklets, and they'll send you a PDF and they're like, okay, we're just having you proof, make sure widows, orphans, margin alignment, things like that. That's traditional proof editing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if somebody's sending you a Word document, you're not doing that sort of thing. You're doing the punctuation, the spelling, and all that, word choice. So,
So, have you ever fundamentally changed a book? Like either shortened it way down or changed the flow of the book? And this sounds like a lot of work and may not be in, you know, the scope of what you do, where somebody it's like what I asked earlier. You ever saw something and you're like, oh no, this isn't gonna work, and had to like really revamp a story? Or is that something that you do?
um, I have not.
Okay.
Um, I would think that that would have to be done at a developmental or content level. So
Like an
way up
alpha.
here at the top, way at the beginning, way at the beginning.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, if I get to a point where the story no longer holds together,
Hmm.
I may just stop and go, okay, and talk to the author at that point, you know, and let them know, hey, I'm running into problems. This is what I'm seeing. Um, I can finish this up and get you my feedback, but I think there might be substantial issue here.
Hmm.
But me as the editor, I would not actually change anything. I would I would put a flag on it and say, hey, this is something you need to look at. This might be a problem. This
Hmm.
might be something that you should you as the author may need to redo some stuff.
Hmm.
But that's up to you, And I like I said, I haven't changed it, but I have done notes like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I haven't ever gotten any direct feedback from an author when I've done something like that.
Okay. Okay. Because that right there just seems like so much work, and
Yeah,
basically you're rewriting their book for them.
yeah. And if it got to the point where it looked like I would have to rewrite huge sections, I'd be like, I'm stopping here because at this point there is a fundamental problem with your story.
Yeah.
you know and that would require a really long conversation probably with them to work through that, and then they would have to take it back, and then me as the editor, I would either need to give them part of their money back because I didn't finish the job I was hired for,
Hmm.
or maybe talk to them and say, okay, so if you want, you can go ahead and rewrite this or do what you want, and you can come back to me when you've done that, and I can see if we can pick it up and see if that worked, whatever you did. um, I haven't had to do that at this point. I've been able to get through all the manuscripts I've gone through, and uh, haven't had any stories that were so um, disorganized, I suppose would be a good word, that
Hmm.
it wasn't holding together well enough. I mean, most everything, even if it was loosely holding together, it's like, okay, well, I can see where that would work, but yeah, kind of
You might
squidgy.
want to. Yeah. So now you've done a different type of editing,
Yes.
and that is anthologies.
Yes.
And so tell us what goes into Oh, and for those who are wondering, you can find this anthology on Amazon. Of course, you can also find it on chriskennedypublishing.com. And I am going to slip the Amazon link into the comments if you are interested.
Yeah. So editing an anthology is kind of twofold. And Jamie Ibsen also understands this. So the first part of it is getting the stories for the anthology. And Kevin and I did what is basically considered a closed anthology, which is we invited everybody into the anthology. Um, there are other types of anthologies like Chris Kennedy does, which is he has a set number of slots, open slots, and that's what's called an open anthology. And you can submit a story no matter who you are, and then the editor has to go through what is called the slush pile.
Mm-hmm.
And slush is basically the stacks of emails or submissions that are sent in by authors in hopes of getting their story into an anthology. And it can be anywhere from, I know Chris Kennedy's standard is 4 to in a 14 story anthology to, all but the beginning and ending story are slush authors. So, oh, and Jamie says he has 8 submissions for We Dare that open submissions, and he has 3 slots available.
Hey man, let's, you know what? We're all family here. Let's anybody looking to write a short story, Jamie needs
Yeah.
3.
Well, I know his We Dare, this particular We Dare anthology has a slightly different requirement
Mm-hmm.
because it's the loose term for the theme is old age and treachery.
Okay.
So old age and treachery always overcomes youth and enthusiasm is kind of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
theme.
yeah.
And he's looking for military or former military or service people. So I know that's his requirements for this one. But so you have to go through and you have to decide if the stories work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the odd thing is even if you have invited people, so all the people that are supposed to be in the anthology have been invited in, you still have to go through and make sure that they fit the theme of the anthology and that they're good enough stories.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times, and Kevin Anderson has a story where he had problems with an author getting their submission in on time,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So, and it's nice to have a situation like Ike and I, because we can both read the story and then I can be like, well, I think it fits, and he can be like, well, I don't think it does, and well, he might have
Mm-hmm.
the final word because, well, it's a Peacemaker anthology. So
Yeah.
it's his corner of the 4HU universe. But we've lucked out. We've gotten, all the authors that we know are and invited to the anthologies are excellent. So they always put in really, really good stories, and we have very little trouble with that. The second side of it is we need to make sure that even if the story works, we need to make sure that all of the details are correct. So we're editing for continuity in the universe. We're making
Mm-hmm.
sure that it fits the parameters of the universe, because if you have somebody going into hyperspace in the 4HU, it takes 170 hours, unless ... There are exceptions, but yes, yes. Oh, so if if you are submitting a story to an anthology,
Mm-hmm.
always follow the submission guidelines. And no, you are not special. You do not get to think that you are the exception to the rule. They will boot your story out just as fast as anybody else's. It doesn't matter the name on the story.
Mm-hmm. What Marisa had, and I want to say it was for one of Jamie's anthologies where she submitted a story and it did not fit the criteria. She thought she was writing one thing and
Mm-hmm.
it turned out to be another thing. But luckily, they gave her a little extra time and she wrote another one for
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And if you know the editor, they might give you a couple extra days to get that story in because they're,
him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know,
To be
so,
exact,
but
right? Yeah.
again, Kevin Anderson, because he's just a font of ton of knowledge, and he has a master's class at Western State University,
Mm-hmm.
and so his publishing students have to, what part of their project or part of their assignment for the year is they have to curate an anthology.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So they get to go through the slush pile. Yeah, they found out why you have submission guidelines when you get 800 submissions.
Oh, okay. I was right. It was Jamie. She wrote a fantasy for a science fiction anthology.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Oh,
so, but one of the reasons submission guidelines exists is because if the editor opens it up and you didn't follow the submission guidelines, they can go, oh, done.
bye
Oh,
bye.
uh, oh, there's another one. Yep. And yeah, they are looking for reasons to pare down that list of 800 or
Mm-hmm.
the list. What was it? Jonathan Mayberry said for his Weird Tales, one of his Weird Tales issues, he had over 10,000, I think he
Oh, so
said.
that's an open submission.
Oh, no, it was.
Oh,
And he has since modified the guidelines and how he selects his stories
mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to.
because he got so many submissions in an open call in a week.
Oof.
And yeah, he said, oh, yeah, nope,
No.
nope, nope, nope. And it's if you use a font that isn't right, if the spacing isn't correct, if
Oh,
your
yeah.
name if your name isn't at the top of the story like it's supposed to be, those are all very basic things. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can't follow those rules, yeah, they will throw them out. Okay, so back to editing anthologies.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, of course, I do the copy slash proof edit before it goes to, I did that for set the terms before it went to Chris because, I'm an actual editor. So it
Mm-hmm.
was easy to, save a step there for him.
Mm-hmm. So, what's a bigger job? Your typical editing of a fantasy, sci-fi, whatever novel, whatever genre novel, or an anthology?
Anthologies have a little bit more work to them just because you have to take each story individually,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody has a different style. So you want to make sure that if you're making changes to it, you're not changing it too much. But you have to do the selection, and then you have to do the actual, or I do the actual editing work afterward. But if you're picking the right people,
Mm-hmm.
anthologies can be easier just because A, they know what they're doing, B, you're getting what you're asking for, and C, you are um, you're working with people that know the rules of punctuation, word choice, all that stuff. So the changes or the corrections that you have to make are very minimal.
And Joyce says, "Don't use Notepad for anything like that, please, for God's sake." She's
Yes.
serious. Okay.
Oh yes. No, I think I know what she's saying, but there are some anthology or some people that request RTF format for their files. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And Bill says, best
Oh,
font is Comic Sans.
Bill. Oh, Bill.
Oh, oh, is this an inside joke?
Okay, so Comic Sans is one of those fonts that is fun to write with or fun to use, but it so it's kind of an inside joke with authors and editors.
Mm-hmm.
And put Jamie's comment up there. Uh, yes, Comic Sans does make for faster writing because your brain can process it a little bit better. However, when you're doing the editing side of it, um, you it's easier to read a serifed font, which is what Times New Roman is.
Okay.
So serifs are the little feet and flags on letters.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps the brain differentiate letters a little bit easier. But yeah, I have heard that Comic Sans makes it easier for people to write in. But if you do write in it, just please select all, change the font. It's an easy fix. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Well, no, that's pretty cool. So, are there any potential future anthologies that you
Um,
might be a part of?
so right now we are working on another Peacemaker anthology. However, it is filled and then some. So we're not quite sure what we're going to do there, but we may have to split it into two. It was all invite only again. So
That seems
we've
the
got that.
best way to go, right?
Um, for ease, if you're in a time crunch,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, invite only is the best way to go, I think. But I mean, if you're trying to find new authors and stuff, definitely open it up as an open call. But make sure that you uh, understand the amount of work of going through all those stories.
Yeah.
And the other thing is for all you anthology editors out there who are going through slush piles, um, if the story doesn't catch you in like the first 2 pages, I mean that's not necessarily a story that you want to keep. So don't feel like you have to read through the entire story just because it was submitted and they followed the rules and everything like that. There are some stories that just aren't going to catch you, and authors know that they have to find the right audience. They know that not all editors are going to like all of their stuff.
Okay. So, we really got in the weeds of editing, and
Yeah.
this has been very informative. Now let's talk some personal stuff. Um, uh, what have you read or are reading right now? Whether you're editing it or and I know you can't say too much about stuff you're currently editing, but whether you're editing it or just reading it or on TV, whatever it is, what's got your attention right now?
Right now, I just finished Steve Ruskin's two. Uh, shoot, I can't remember the. Hold on. Uh, Let me pull it up really quick. I can get it on my phone. It's a thriller series.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like. I told him it's kind of like Dan Brown, but it makes more sense. His Trina Piper series. So Trina Piper.
Okay.
And book 1 is The Newton Cipher. So there's a little bit of history, there's a little bit of thriller, and a little bit of magic.
All right.
So
Well,
I finished those two.
yeah.
Matt and I are watching Lost in Space, the Netflix series.
Oh, how's that?
Oh my God. They've done a really good job because we really hate Dr. Smith.
Well, yeah. If you hate somebody, somebody's doing a good
Oh
job.
man, do we hate that character.
Mm-hmm.
But it does deviate from the original series, but I think that they've done a really good job of explaining the situation that this particular Robinson family is in,
Mm-hmm.
and how things are working. And I picked up that the theme song for the closing credits theme is
Mm-hmm.
the same as the movie, just without the techno beat.
Ah, okay.
So I did realize that. We're also watching Dark, which is on Netflix, and that is a German import.
Oh yeah.
And we got into that one because we watched 1899,
Mm-hmm.
and then we watched the making of 1899, and they explained that it was very similar to Dark, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna have to go watch that now.
Gotta watch that now. Yeah.
Yeah, and 1899, unfortunately, does not have another series coming after it, which I wish they had. Even though it took us more than half the series to get into it,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't explain anything until about 6 episodes in, and I was just like, really? I'm about to just call it, and we stuck with it, and I'm glad we did, because the ending was kind of a kicker. What else am I reading? I've been reading Revolutionary War history for Kevin Eikenberry, because
Oh yeah.
we're hoping that he'll get the go ahead to do the follow up to his Crossing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I need to know that if he's going to do that.
I love What If.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan Mayberry, of course, is always on my list now. What else am I reading?
Matt says his writing will be weirder for watching 1899.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, see, the thing is Matt writes weird and horror and weird horror, weirder, yeah. And so yeah, I can see how 1899 would fit into it too. 1883 is okay, not quite the same as 1899 Joy. I think she's talking about the Yellowstone prequel series,
Oh
maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so who else was I reading? Oh, John Sanford is a modern, contemporary thriller. Basically, his Lucas Davenport stuff's really good. Um, Michael Connelly and the Bosch. Bosch, if you want a really
Oh
good
yeah,
TV show. Um, oh, Reacher, the TV show. They just
really
wrapped
good
season.
show.
They just wrapped filming season two. Uh, which I reread the book that season's going to be based on.
Hmm.
Who else have I been? And I've got a couple of Nick Thacker's thrillers that I want to read. So
So are thrillers what you're really into, or is it just what you're into right now?
thrillers, I think, are really what I'm into now because they're not what I edit.
Hmm. Oh yeah, little
So
palate cleanser.
yeah, one time I tried to read and edit a fantasy at the same time,
Ooh, yeah,
and I started getting the storylines mixed up, and I'm like, oh no, 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 we can't do that.
yeah, I could see that getting
so
confusing.
so if I'm editing science fiction, I need to be reading something else, and thriller is good because it's usually outside of what I'm editing, and then it
Yeah,
got weirder.
and it got weirder. Um, so I have been reading a Dutch series
Ooh,
from it's Department Q. I forget the author's name.
Department Q. Okay.
Yes, it's cold case, typically murder. No, always murder. Cases like that, and
Okay.
they usually have something to do. It's not bad. About 9 books.
Okay.
And we've been watching Warrior Nun. Not a bad show.
Okay. All right.
Not a bad show.
What's that on?
Netflix.
Oh, okay. Warrior Nun.
Warrior Nun. It's got to do with Catholicism and angels and alternate
Interesting.
worlds, and it's fun. There's a little drag in the first season, but second season is shaping up to be pretty good.
Okay.
Um, so and not only that, but if you guys aren't friends with Maya on Facebook, you probably should be. She puts up well, she loves Wordle for sure.
Yes.
She puts her Wordle scores up, and she puts pictures of her culinary creations on there from time to time. So are you a big cook or?
Uh, well, we like good food, so sometimes you have to make it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, today's wasn't really a cooking thing. Today's was we have a really good Mexican place called Santiago's, and they
Hmm.
have the best I think they have the best breakfast burritos, and they definitely have some of the hottest green chili you'll find.
I do.
And we were out of. So what we do is I take the green chili and I freeze it into these little pucks,
Hmm.
and then I add that to like the Stokes green chili, canned green chili, to
Okay.
kick it up a little bit.
Hmm.
So we were out of that, so I needed to run and get some of that anyway. So we got some breakfast burritos and we smothered it in the green chili, and yeah, that was breakfast.
Okay.
So
So, where it do you are you seen out in the wild anywhere? Do you go to conventions and all
um,
that
un-
stuff?
unfortunately, we've just had our one and only um, appearance this year because we're hoping to get some downtime. Matt's job's been a little crazy the last couple of years, and
Mm-hmm.
with COVID and everything, we haven't done a lot of traveling. So
Mm-hmm.
we're hoping to get out. If we do anything else this year, then the only other thing we were considering is probably 20 books to 50K in November.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so those are the two. Oh, so Superstars was the last thing that we did, and that is a writers conference
Mm-hmm.
here in Colorado. It's held in Colorado Springs, and it's for authors, editors, and anybody else in the publishing industry.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly authors, but there's plenty of networking if you're in any part of the publishing thing. And so but it's on the business of writing. So it's what you need to know on the business side. So it's not a lot of writing classes or how to write and how
Hmm.
to plot, even though there are some of those. But but it's really good, and I've been doing that for 8 years
Oh
now.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear it's a very good convention.
Yes, it's excellent. Marisa came
Hmm.
out for this year, and so did several other folks. And hopefully we can get uh, some more of the CKP folks out there. Yeah, and Matt is saying that yes, he's fat because of me and he's sticking to that story.
Uh,
Yeah, well, he's not too shabby of a cook either when he does. So he
yeah.
makes killer enchiladas.
Ooh.
Um, yeah. Um, but as far as anything else, that's all I've got. We've got slated for the year.
Will we see y'all at FactoryCon?
Uh, not sure. Not
Okay.
sure. It all depends. The trip that we're hoping to take is uh that time of year is the best time to head over there. So we're
Uh,
hoping.
Out of the country
Yeah,
or
Italy, hopefully.
ooh, Italy.
Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, we went there for our honeymoon. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah, that's what we keep hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what part?
Um, all over if we can. Well, here's the funny thing. So, we look at houses online, of course, everybody does, and everybody's like, "Oh, and it's only a half an hour from Rome," and we're like, "Well, like that's across town for us."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
For some people, that's going to
everybody's
the grocery store. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was like, "Oh my God." Um, People are like, "Oh, well, we're in the northern part, so if you're up here," and it's like, well, the northern part is like 2 hours away, so yeah, we could do
Hmm.
that. We
Yeah.
actually, I one of the authors that I work with, uh, Fulvio Gatti, lives in uh, the uh, Turin area
Hmm.
up north. So he's like, "Yeah, if you come over, you got to come stop by." And it's like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got an invite for up there. Um, And then we also know somebody, I know a couple of folks in England, and they're like, "Oh, well, if you stop through here," it's like, I know, I know where all y'all are at.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you speak any Italian, or are you learning, or?
No, no, we don't. We're gonna be crazy Americans.
Oh yeah, I was when I went. That was like,
Yeah.
well, so my crazy American story when we went to Italy is we went to Elba, and because at the time I still like beaches, not so much anymore. And we said, oh yeah, you get because to me a vacation is sitting on the beach, drinking yourself blind, and then going to sleep. And so it's, oh yeah, we'll go to Elba. There's a beach. It's all rocks. It was
Yep.
it was not a good beach. Uh,
No, no. Mediterranean beaches, except for in certain areas, are the water-worn rocks.
yeah, yeah. So I was a little bummed out by that, but still, it's an island. It's beautiful. And so we go to this restaurant, and like I said, I don't speak Italian. I'm not a huge pasta eater. And I'm looking at the menu, and I order the one thing I recognize, and that's fried calamari.
Okay.
And before I get my food, the table, a couple tables down, apparently they ordered calamari too, but they ordered the steamed calamari, and it is a whole squid that's just staring you in the face. It's got the face and everything, and
Oh
it's
no.
like, and I told her I don't care if they think I'm a stupid American. If that comes out, I'm sending it back because I don't want my food staring at me. You know,
Right.
and I got lucky that it's like regular calamari that you get
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
It's like, whoo, man, dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I can understand. Yeah, don't get steamed. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
disturbing.
I mean,
Too
it
funny.
just looked like a kraken coming out, and it was had steam coming off of it, and it was just, I was like, oh no.
But you eat crayfish, right?
Oh yeah, I'll eat. Yeah, I don't suck the heads though. I'll rip the heads off. That's gone.
Oh,
uh, all right. Well,
oh,
it has been lovely speaking with you, and
yes.
I appreciate you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
And but before we go, let's say again where is the best place for people if people want to hire you for edits? What is the best place to find you?
My website, mrkdup.com.
Okay. And again, it has been a pleasure. Before we go, I got to pay the bills.
Okay.
So remember, everybody, and Maya mentioned this earlier. If you sign up uh, for the mailing list on chriskennedypublishing.com, there is a chance that you could become, an alpha reader or be on the reading list, and you get all kinds of freebies and stuff like that. So sign up for the mailing list if you want the most up-to-date information for any author or publisher. Sign up for the mailing list. It's the best place to go. Of course, support this channel and CKP by joining their Patreon. Lots of free stuff, free content there. They have the CKP Confidential and all that, so you get great stuff there. And of course, you can find everything on Amazon. Get more news on the Facebook page and the fan page with the factory floor. A few of featured YouTube channels. Of course, a little nepotism here. Marisa Wolf on YouTube. We're going to be putting out more content there. Casey Ezell, The Writer Life, has a great YouTube channel where she talks about everything to do with her life as a writer. She'll have guests on from time to time. It's a pretty informative YouTube channel, so check that out. And of course, our buddies Mark and Joy with World Maker Books, where they're doing recorded reads of some of Mark Wandry's older novels. So go ahead and check that out as soon as you can. It's quite entertaining.
Yeah, and
And
if you're interested in more on superstars,
mhm.
Casey Azell's most recent YouTube video talks to one of her friends who happened to go to Superstars this year. So there's a lot of information there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, and in other news on this channel, check out the Future Books podcast hosted by Randall Willis and brought to you by Shark Flight Media, our good buddy Ian Malone. The March episode has not come out yet, but it is March 1st, so it should be coming out soon. The last episode was with John Sears. And if you want to know what's coming out, it's a great podcast. Randall Willis is a very passionate fan and host, and it's a good show. So and most of the time, Chris Kennedy himself is on the show along with the featured author of the month. So go check that out. And while we're talking about books, some of the most current releases, of course, one that Maya worked on, the book 6 in The Last Marine, Valhalla Awaits, The Never Ever War by John Sears. Oh, sorry, The Last Marine is by William S. Frisbee Jr. The Never Ever War is John S. Sears. The Apprentice to the Gods by D.T. Reed, and Prince Peacemaker by Fred Hughes, and of course Hunting the Heart by John R. Osborne. We did a live book launch for that last week, so go check that out. It's a urban fantasy, and I believe that is all. And as I said before, if you like this channel, please subscribe. It really helps us out. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell people you don't even like to like and subscribe, and that'll help the show to keep going.
Yep.
Again, thank you very much for coming on. This was very
Yeah.
informative. I've enjoyed it very much. Anytime you want to come back on, especially if you're doing that anthology,
Okay.
we'll go ahead and promote that for you. Be happy to have you back on. And with that, I bid you adieu. And until next time, next episode should be around March 18th, and we will be doing a live book launch for Ian Malone. And so check us out then, and you'll start seeing ads for that in the next probably 2 weeks. So with that, thank you all for that attended the show, and thank you all in the future for watching, and we will catch you next time.